Welcome back, learners, to our interesting course based on the theme Rudimentary Principles and Practices of Managerial Economics. I am Dr. Shantanu Saurabh, Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce, DAV PG College, Banaras Hindu University. In this Module 9, lecture number 44, based on the theme Theory of Profit, today we'll be covering these 5 topics, as you're able to see on the screen, 5 theories in fact. The first theory we'll be covering will be rent theory of profit. The second we'll be covering today will be wages theory of profit. The third we'll be covering today will be marginal productivity theory of profit, risk theory of profit, and uncertainty bearing theory of profit. As you are aware, that profit is one of the most center point for any firm or organization around which all the activities involve. So there are different theories based on profit. So we are going to discuss 5 theories in this session and some leftover theories in the next session. So one by one we'll be covering all these theories. As you're able to see again, those 5 theories have been represented here. Rent theory of profit, wages theory of profit, marginal productivity theory of profit, risk theory of profit, and uncertainty bearing theory of profit. The first, that is rent theory of profit. This was basically propounded by F.A. Walker. He established an article in the year 1887 with the title The Source of Business Profit, which means this concept was given by F.A. Walker, that is rent theory of profit. He published an article basically in the year 87 with the title The Source of Business Profit in the Quarterly Journal of Economics, in which he threw light on the rent theory of profit. He tried to link profit to rent earnings. In his viewpoint, rent and profit belong to the genus of surplus, which means he tried to establish a link between the rent and the profit. He was of strong opinion of this, and in his viewpoint, rent and profit belong to the genus of surplus, and this is a very important dimension to be understood. They are similar in many ways, which means rent and profit are similar in many ways. He explained why they are similar. The lands are of different kinds or types. The production of superior or better land is high, which means the land which is of superior quality, the production at that land is comparatively high as compared to the marginal one. So differential surplus arises, which is termed as rent of land, which means the land which is of better quality produces more, and accordingly the land which is of not so superior quality or of marginal quality produces less. So he tried to understand this with the concept of rent of land accordingly. In the same way, he described the profit is the rent for the entrepreneurs who are dealing in the market. A marginal entrepreneur earns only enough profit or minimum profit to cover up the wage of management, which means, in his word, the marginal entrepreneur earns only that much profit that can help to sustain in the industry and not enough profit. On the other hand, the superior entrepreneur produces at comparatively low cost so as to generate good amount of profit, which means the entrepreneur who is superior, who is better, will be producing at low cost, and it will be helpful in generating the profit. So in this theory, till this point, we are able to understand that Professor Walker focused on the concept of rent and profit, as the lands are of different kinds. In the same manner, we can say the entrepreneurs are of different kinds. The entrepreneurs might be a superior one, a better one. On the other hand, it can be of the marginal one. So he focused on this one, and he tried to establish the relationship between the rent and profit. So to summarize, we can say rent rises because of differential surplus of superior entrepreneurs over the marginal or no profit entrepreneur, which means here he said that rent here rises because of differential surplus, which is because of the superior entrepreneur over the other one who is marginal or no profit entrepreneur. So altogether we can say that in this theory, Professor Walker focused on establishing a relationship between rent and profit, and he talked about different kinds of rent, and then he talked about the different kind of entrepreneurs. They can be like superior one or the marginal one. The superior one will be performing better on the contradiction. On the other hand, the marginal one will not be doing so much great. The marginal one will be producing only that much that will help the firm to sustain in the market. Now, we'll be talking about the criticism of rent theory of profit. Profit not being the only reward of uncertainty. Here, he focused that profit is the only reward for uncertainty, but there are other rewards also of uncertainty. Perfect similarity between rent and profit cannot exist. This is a kind of hypothesis that here Professor Walker focused that there is perfect similarity between rent and profit which cannot exist in the real market. So this is another criticism. The third criticism he talked was no rent land can be there. There can be certain circumstances for which there is no rent. But on the other hand, on the contradiction, there cannot be any case of no profit entrepreneur. All the entrepreneurs of the world will be focusing on generating or earning profit for the respective firms. So this was another very important criticism of the rent theory of profit. Then Walker focused on only surplus profit. This is another criticism, that he was only focusing on generation of surplus profit. And finally, the assumption of profitless or marginal entrepreneur is a kind of myth, which means the concept of marginal entrepreneur or profitless manager or entrepreneur is a kind of myth. It does not sustain or is not a case in the real market. Every entrepreneur focuses on generating good amount of profit for the respective firm. So these are the 5 criticisms of rent theory of profit. Now we'll be talking of another theory which is termed as wage theory of profit. Now the wage theory of profit was basically propounded by a famous economist known as Taussig, which you need to remember, and he was supported by Davenport. He was of the opinion that profit is the wage basically of the entrepreneur, which he gets because of his ability and intelligence. Now this is a very important thing. In the last theory we were talking about the relationship between rent and profit. Now we are focusing on the relationship between wage and profit. Here this theory, wage theory, was basically given by Taussig and he was supported by Davenport, and he was of the viewpoint that profit is the wage basically for the entrepreneur. This is the crux of this theory, that profit is the wage for the entrepreneurs. And why he will get the wage? Because of his ability and intelligence which is being used by the respective firm. So here the focus is that the profit is the wage, and the wage, why he will be getting the wage? Because he is giving his ability, his intelligence, his skills in the firm so that the firm can grow. So in this theory the focus was on labor and the entrepreneur. In the previous one the focus was on the land and the entrepreneur. As the labor gets wages in return of the services he provides, as you remember that the labor in return of the services, what he gets wages. In the same way here the focus is that in the same way profit is being given as wage to the entrepreneur for the service. As the labor provides service, he gets wage. In the same way as the entrepreneur provides service, he will be getting a profit in the form of wages. And the entrepreneur gets profit for the services being rendered to the respective firm. The difference here being that labor gets paid for their physical services. This is a very basic difference, that laborers actually put physical services, actually provide physical services on the ground reality. On the other hand, the entrepreneur gets paid for the mental services, mental skills, or whatever activities he performs on the ground. So that is the basic difference between this rent theory. Here the focus was on profit and rent, as the concept was given by Walker. Here the focus was on generation of differential surplus, and here the concept of superior entrepreneur and marginal entrepreneur was talked in comparison to superior land or marginal land. Now in this theory of wage, which was given by Taussig, he was focusing on the wage and profit. He was establishing a relationship between wage and profit. And he was of the opinion that as the wage is being provided to laborers, in the same way the entrepreneur gets wage for the services he renders to the respective firm. The difference he mentioned here was that labor gets paid for the physical services and the entrepreneur here gets paid for the mental services or the skills he has. Now we'll be talking of the criticisms of wage theory of profit. We have already talked about the criticism of rent theory of profit. Now wage theory of profit. The entrepreneur bears the risk element here, and the labor does not bear any such kind of risk. As you are aware that the activity of the entrepreneur is taking risky decisions based on his skills and capacities. So entrepreneur bears the risk. On the other hand, the labor provides physical services and there is no involvement of any risk here. The labor gets the wages which is pre-decided. So this is another criticism based on which the relationship cannot be established. The second is profit is kind of uncertain. Profit cannot be pre-decided that the respective firm will be generating this amount of profit. On the other hand, the wage is pre-decided. As the works get started, it is pre-decided how much the wage will be paid to the respective person. The third, profit can be negative. The firm can incur losses. This is a very important aspect, but wages can never be negative. You cannot be saying to any respective labor that you will not be getting wage for the services you are rendering on the ground. But according to the skills of the firm, there can be cases when the firms can be generating negative profit or even losses. And fourth criticism is that the entrepreneur is a kind of owner for the firm and risk bearer, which means the entrepreneur is the supreme person of the firm who is involved in the decision making and is a kind of owner for the firm. He bears the risk. On the other hand, the labor does not consider these features. He is just part of productive activities, and after that he leaves the firm. So these are four important criticisms of wage theory of profit. I hope you must be understanding the difference between here the rent theory of profit, which was focusing on linking profit with rent. Now we talked about linking the wage with the profit. Then we talked about the criticism. And the third theory now, that is marginal productivity theory of profit. This theory is a kind of special form of marginal productivity theory of distribution. You are aware of the word marginal. The difference between the consecutive units is marginal. So here the focus is this theory is a kind of special form of marginal productivity theory of distribution. Economists, which are Chapman, Stigler and Hague, have made attempt to explain profit through the marginal productivity theory. Now here the profit here is linked with the marginal productivity theory. The first it was linked with the rent, then it was linked with the wages. Now we are linking the profit with the marginal productivity theory. They were of the opinion that entrepreneur is the factor of production. This is a very important thing to be understood. They were of the viewpoint that entrepreneur is a kind of factor of production. As we have discussed different factors, even entrepreneur is a kind of factor, and the factor's price is in the form of profit, should be determined, which means as you are paying to the factors of production, in the same way the entrepreneur is a kind of factor and profit should be paid to this respective factor, which shall be equal to its marginal productivity, which means the profit shall be equal to the marginal productivity. No random profit can be there. The profit shall be equal to the marginal productivity of the firm or of the entrepreneur. The marginal productivity of the entrepreneur here means the difference of yield because of contribution and yield without the contribution, which means here marginal productivity is calculated on the skills of entrepreneur on the basis of yield before his contribution and after his contribution to the respective firm. In precise, if the marginal productivity of the entrepreneur is more, the profit will be more, and vice versa, which means if the marginal productivity of the entrepreneur will be less, the profit will be less. So in this theory, the focus was on understanding or considering, you can say considering entrepreneur as a factor of production, and here the marginal productivity is estimated on the difference of yield before the contribution of entrepreneur and after the contribution of entrepreneur. If the marginal productivity of the firm is more, the profit will be more. If the productivity is less, the profit will be comparatively less. Now, the criticism of marginal productivity theory of profit, it considers one side of approach of demand and not supply. This is a very important criticism. Second is that marginal productivity measurement is difficult, and third, chance element has been ignored here. As you are aware that market keeps on moving, so there are different chances of different occurrences, so that has been ignored here. So these are three criticisms of marginal productivity theory of profit. Now the risk theory of profit. Now the first theory we discussed was related to the rent, then we discussed about the wages, then we discussed about this marginal productivity theory. Now we are focusing on the important element, which is the risk theory of profit. This theory was basically propounded or given by Professor Hawley in the year 1907. He gave the explanation of it in his important book, which was termed as Enterprise and Productive Process. So this theory was propounded by Professor Hawley in the 1907, and he mentioned this in his book Enterprise and Productive Process. He focused here on the risk-taking function of the entrepreneur. This is the most important dimension to be understood by all the learners, that in risk theory the focus is on risk-taking function of the entrepreneur, and profit is basically reward for the risk-taking, which means the profit is a kind of reward for the risks the entrepreneur bears. So here by Professor Hawley, the focus was on risk-taking capacity or risk-taking function. He received support from Professor Marshall for this respective viewpoint. He was of the viewpoint that all the firms or businesses bear risk. There can be no firm who is not bearing risk. Every firm some way or another is bearing risk, and final reward for the risk they are bearing is profit. The firm will not be bearing the risk if there is no profit in return for it. All the firms are engaged in bearing of risk because they are of the viewpoint that the end result of risk will be profit. So if the risk is more, there are more chances of earning profit. This is another very important dimension, that if the firm is taking more risk, there are more chances that the firm will be earning more profit. He focused that profit of the entrepreneur exceeds that of ordinary return of that of capital, which means he was of the viewpoint that profit of the entrepreneur exceeds the ordinary return for that of capital. He basically mentioned 4 types of risk. Another important thing which you need to understand and remember, according to him, risk was focused on open replacement, risk proper, uncertainty and obsolescence. So these are 4 kinds of risk: open replacement, risk proper, uncertainty and obsolescence. Now the criticism of risk theory of profit. Profit is not mandatory to rise in all type of risk. This is the most important criticism, that it is not mandatory or compulsory thing that in different kind of risk necessarily there will be profit. There might be chances, you might incur loss also. This was one criticism. The second, he talked about profit is the reward for reducing the risk. This is another you can say criticism, that profit is the reward for reducing the risk. Third, he said there is no direct relationship between risk and profit earned. And fourth, other factors were ignored here. Only risk was being provided the supreme priority here. Now, the final theory, which is based on the uncertainty bearing theory of profit. I'll just provide you a gist what we have discussed till now. First, we discussed about this rent theory. We tried to establish relation between rent and profit, and this theory was given by Walker. Then we talked about this theory, wage theory. Here the relationship between wage and profit was established. Then we talked about marginal productivity theory of profit. Here the relationship between profit and marginal productivity was established on the basis of entrepreneurs. Then we talked about this risk theory, which was given by Professor Hawley, and he focused on the risk-taking element or function. And now finally we are discussing the uncertainty bearing theory of profit. This theory was developed by famous economist Frank H. Knight. He was of the opinion that profit is basically reward for uncertainty. Now, in the previous theory, the profit was linked with risk. Now, Professor Knight is focusing that profit is reward for what? For uncertainty the market or the entrepreneur bears, and not for the risk-bearing capacity of the entrepreneurs, which means in this theory he is focusing on the uncertainty concept. Profit accrues or generates because of bearing of uncertainty in the business. As you are already aware that market is completely uncertain, as it is affected by numerous factors. So uncertainty always exists in the market. So Professor Knight differentiated between risk and uncertainty. He further divided the risk into two parts: insurable risk and non-insurable risk. So we'll try to understand first what is insurable risk. The risk which can be predicted or can be insured is insurable risk, which means any such kind of risk which can be pre-predicted, that it can happen or can be insured, is kind of insurable risk. On the other hand, the examples can be cases of accidents, fire or theft. These examples can be insured, and the risk or the uncertainty can be transferred to the insurance company. So these can be insured and the risk can be passed to other respective insurance companies. The premium paid for it can be included in the cost of production, means the expenditure for this can be included in the cost of production. So here we talked that Professor Knight was focusing on uncertainty concept, and he was of the opinion that profit is because of bearing of uncertainty, and finally he differentiated between risk and uncertainty, and he further divided risk into two parts, that is insurable risk and insurable risk. Then I explained you the insurable risk, and finally he talked about the non-insurable risk. These are such kind of risk which cannot be predicted beforehand or insured, which means it cannot be insured even by the insurance companies. Such are uncertain behavior of consumers. The behavior of consumers cannot be insured by the insurance company or any other respective body. The technical risk of the market, the business cycle risk, business policy, etc. Such kind of things cannot be insured by the market or the insurance companies. So this is the basic meaning of non-insurable risk. So Professor Knight focused that uncertainty as the main function for the respective entrepreneur. Professor Knight assumes that uncertainty is a unique factor resulting to profit. As you are aware, the market is full of uncertainties and it contributes to the resulting of profit. His theory does not contribute profit simple to the dynamic change. Now the criticism of uncertainty bearing theory of profit. Profit is not the only reward for bearing the uncertainty. There can be different results for bearing the uncertainty. This was one criticism. Second, he talked about measurement here of uncertainty is not possible. And third, it may lead to loss also. And finally, he talked that there is no effect of uncertainty on the multinational firms. So these are the criticisms. This concludes. Now I'll just be providing what we have discussed. The gist of it, we discussed here the rent theory, the wages theory, the marginal productivity theory, the risk theory, and the uncertainty bearing theory. The rent theory was given by Walker, in which we tried to establish a relationship between the rent and profit. In here we talked about the concept of superior land or marginal land. In the same way we talked about superior entrepreneur and the marginal entrepreneur. This was given by Walker. Then we talked about wage theory, which was given by Taussig. Here we tried to connect between wages and profit. As the labor gets wage, in the same way the entrepreneur gets the wages for the services he renders. The labor provides physical activity services. On the other hand, the entrepreneur provides mental services for the firm. Then I talked about the marginal productivity theory of profit, which was basically given by Chapman, Stigler, and Hague. Here we tried to understand the marginal productivity of the entrepreneur and his contribution to the respective firm. Here, the marginal productivity of the entrepreneur means the difference of yield of contribution with the entrepreneur and without the entrepreneur. So that we have discussed in detail. The criticism we discussed. We discussed the risk theory of profit. This was given by Professor Hawley. Here, the risk is directly having a relationship with the profit. The more the risk, the more the profit the firm will be generating. And he talked of 4 kinds of risk: open replacement, risk proper, uncertainty, and obsolescence. And finally, the last we talked about the uncertainty bearing theory of profit, which was given by Professor Knight. And he was of the viewpoint that uncertainty is the most important dimension. And he further divided risk into 2 parts: insurable risk and non-insurable risk. And lastly, he said that uncertainty is a unique factor resulting into profit. And finally, we discussed the criticism of uncertainty bearing theory of profit. So that's all for this lecture. In this lecture, I tried to throw light on different theories based on profit. I hope you must have understood these theories and hope to see you in the upcoming sessions. Thank you, learners, for being patient and listening to us. Thank you.